Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
The rain didn't fall straight that night. It slammed sideways, like the sky was furious. We'd just flipped the house lights when I heard the downpour hit the roof like gravel. Our guests scattered from the terrace like they were on fire, heels clacking across the tiles, tux jackets pulled over heads, water everywhere. I was 38, running the Lantern House, a banquet complex in Columbus with a proper stage and union lighting. 2 rules kept the place from turning into a mess: start on time and follow the safety plan. Every single night. No exceptions. That night was booked out. A retirement gala with a quartet, a plated dinner, and a headliner doing classics. Diego, my assistant, came sprinting over, soaked to the knees, face twisted like he'd knocked something over and didn't know how to fix it. "Headliner's stuck behind an accident," he said. 35 minutes out, minimum. Then he added fast, "I found a fix." Quick note. Before we continue, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. That's when I saw Kelsey. Arms crossed so tight she looked like she was holding herself back from throttling someone. She's my event manager, clipboard queen, safety zealot. If there's a fire code clause, she knows it by number. Both of them looked past me. That's where I saw him. A kid, maybe 12 or 13, standing just inside the lobby on the welcome mat. Hoodie drenched, violin case open at his feet, strings of water dripping off the hem and pooling around his shoes. Looked like he weighed 90 pounds, maybe. I said it before I even thought. No street sets inside. Trip hazards, wet floors, licensing, crowd movement, union contracts. My brain flipped through all of it in 2 seconds. Diego cut in fast. He was under the awning playing. I told him he could come inside. He's good, Jared. Real good. I offered him a plate and a dry corner, just until the weather passes. Kelsey shook her head sharp. Absolutely not. We've got a cue sheet. Spike marks aren't set. There's power cables everywhere, and this floor is already slick. While they bickered, Darius, our head of security, stood off to the side, arms folded, watching the kid like he saw something none of us did. Darius doesn't speak unless it matters. That silence meant something. Meanwhile, our standby trio, piano, cello, viola, were tuning up near stage A. The pianist looked up, saw the kid, and gave this subtle nod like, "If he starts, I'll follow." "Name?" I asked Diego, not because I expected it to matter. Simon Porter," he said. The kid stepped forward without waiting, dropped to a knee, adjusted a peg, didn't ask permission, didn't stall. He just tuned with the kind of focus you don't fake. He stepped onto the side rug, right by the potted ficus, and played. No mic, no amp, just bow on strings. Not a cover, not something pulled from the radio or TikTok, but something shaped. A variation on a theme, bending like memory, something you felt behind your ribs. It was the kind of quiet that rain makes louder. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Someone dropped a napkin and didn't bend to pick it up, and I felt it hit me, real and sharp, right in the chest. Diego leaned close. His last name's Porter. That name, Porter, brought a face with it, a face I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. The kid finished and lowered his bow. No flourish. Just done. I heard myself say, "Get him a plate. Keep him dry." Kelsey didn't say a word, but her jaw was locked so tight you could hear her teeth click. The crowd clapped, not polite, but full, and I nodded once, like that was enough. Inside, though, my head was spinning. I knew that name. I knew it way too well. I walked him backstage with the noise of the clapping still echoing off the tile. He held the violin close to his chest like it might bolt if he let go. His hoodie sleeves were damp and clung to his wrists. I kept my expression steady, shoulders square, jaw set, still trying to wear the rules guy face, even though my pulse was speeding. He looked around the green room like he didn't know where to stand. I pulled a towel from the supply bin and handed it to him. He took it with both hands like it was something delicate. What's your name? I asked again, quieter this time. Simon, he said. Simon Porter. My stomach dropped just hearing it again. I nodded like it meant nothing and motioned toward the bench under the coat hooks. He sat but kept the violin upright between his knees, the bow still tucked under his arm like a second limb. You write that piece? I asked. He glanced up. Not exactly. It's a variation. My grandfather wrote the theme, Harold Porter. He passed away a while ago. Not famous anymore. Just local history. Harold played piano, didn't he? Simon's eyes lifted at that. Yeah, how'd you know? I heard him once, a long time ago. He nodded once, then looked down at the strings. His fingers were still twitching like his body hadn't caught up to the fact the piece was over. I caught the label inside the violin when he shifted it to rest against his shoulder. School rental. The faded sticker said, District Loaner number 12, with a number that meant it had passed through at least 10 sets of hands before his. You play other stuff too? Or mostly your grandfather's work? I make changes. He left a bunch of sketches and fragments. I try to finish them. He hesitated. Sometimes I write new ones, but I always start with him. You got lessons? He gave a half shrug. Sometimes. My mom finds a way. What's her name? He looked at me then, cautious. Jane Porter. That hit harder than it should have. I held steady. She home tonight? She's got the flu, he said, like it was a script. And some other stuff. I sat down across from him and didn't say anything for a second. I hadn't seen Jane in nearly 20 years, not since she threw me in the back seat of her Toyota and sped me to the ER after a distracted driver clipped me outside the campus studio. If she'd waited half an hour, I'd be in a cemetery instead of running a banquet hall. You play piano too? No, he said, a little too fast. Just violin. I mean, we have a keyboard, but it's mostly busted. My mom decorates cakes part-time. Works for this bakery near downtown. Only when she has the energy. She bake? Not really. Just decorating. She says it's easier on her body. Before I could say more, Diego stuck his head in the door, breathless. The trio's fine. Crowd's warmed up again. Let the kid do one more? From behind me, Kelsey's voice cut in sharp. Absolutely not. Floors are slick, lights are at 75, and we don't have spike marks. The trio doesn't have charts. You want a lawsuit? The audience is settled, Diego pushed. We got 200 people in there who just went dead silent for a kid in a hoodie. I don't care if they levitated, Kelsey snapped. You can't just improvise an act with no charts or placement. That's when Darius stepped into the hallway behind her and said low, The kid's got it. I'll keep the walkway clear. I'll stand the whole time. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. That settled it for me. 5 minutes, I said. Move fast. We pulled rugs. Darius ran a caution cone. Diego got the trio reset, rerouted the cables away from the wet floor. I moved one of the chairs off stage so the pianist could get a better visual line on the boy's elbow. Simon tuned quick, no hesitation, and raised his bow like he knew exactly what came next. This time, it was darker, slower, still from that same well of memory, but bent into something aching. And somehow, the pianist followed like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. Halfway through the piece, the cellist leaned forward and caught a low drone underneath the melody. The whole thing pulled together like fabric being stitched in real time. By the time Simon let the final note ring, the crowd was already standing. Not out of politeness. This was the kind of applause you don't plan. It just happens. I stepped out in front of the mic and raised my hand. That's enough for tonight, I said loud, before anyone could ask for more. The line had to stay. If I let it blur now, I'd never get it back. I walked straight to him, handed him a hot plate from the side cart, chicken, rice, and 2 rolls, and told him he could wait in the lounge until the storm passed. He looked up at me like he didn't quite know why I was helping. I didn't either. What's your mother's number? I asked, already reaching for my phone. Tell her I'm Jared Carter. I drove over the next morning with 2 coffees and a cardboard tray, and the same knot of nerves I used to get before college juries. Except now I had payroll to meet, 3 ballrooms to book, and a venue full of people depending on me to show up like an adult. Her building was tucked behind a strip mall that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the Bush administration. 3rd floor walk-up, no elevator, buzz-in busted, so I texted from the parking lot. She opened the door already dressed like she'd been up for hours, hair tied back, hoodie zipped halfway, eyes sharp. She didn't say hi, just stepped aside to let me in. Place was neat, almost too neat. You could feel the control in it. Couch throw folded with military corners. Kitchen smelled faintly like almond extract and Lysol. Pill bottles lined the counter in a row like little soldiers guarding the edge. She'd lost weight since college. Cheekbones sharper, collarbones visible even through the hoodie. The color in her face was better than I expected, but not by much. She nodded at the tray. One of those mine? Unless you switched to black with oat milk and 2 sugars. She gave the smallest twitch of a smile and took the cup. We sat at the counter. I opened my folder and laid 3 pages down in front of her. No preamble. I wasn't here to pitch, just to lay terms on the table. Simon plays 9 weekends total. Early sets only. Nothing past 9 at night. No weekday rehearsals. No school interference. Every slot built around his academic calendar. $1,250 a month stipend for lessons, transport, performance prep, paid through my youth arts fund. Not me, not the business. Her eyes moved across the page fast, lips tightening. She didn't speak. I started the fund 2 years ago, I added. It's where we pull our scholarship loaners from. This isn't a one-time thing. It's a structure. She set the coffee down without drinking and said, I don't take handouts. This isn't a handout. It's a contract. Terms are clean. He can walk away any time. I said no charity. Then don't call it that. Her jaw worked, but she didn't interrupt again. I flipped the next page. You, bakery decorator part-time. Hours capped to fit your energy and your doc's schedule. Form W-2, not under the table. Taxed and filed like any other job. You'll be on our kitchen team, not front of house. No stress, no pacing, no pushing. She let out a breath and folded her arms. You need flexibility. We've got a setup in the prep area nobody touches after 4 p.m. It's a good corner. Low heat, high stool. You can do detail work without standing long. I don't want you fixing me. I'm not. I'm hiring you. She didn't respond. I pulled the 3rd page. Housing. I've got a 2-bedroom corporate unit downtown we use for out-of-town acts. 7-month term max. Utilities covered. Fully inspected. Move-in ready. It's yours if you want it. She looked straight at me then. Are you trying to date me, Jared? No, I said flat. No angle, no strings. This isn't college. This is structure. Her shoulders dropped just enough for me to know she believed me, or at least believed I meant it. And the violin? I pulled out the last slip, copy of the care agreement from a luthier I've trusted for years. $5,600 loaner, full insurance. He signs a care doc and checks in monthly. He treats it like it's his, until it is. She stared at the page, then looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Formal only, she said. Everything needs to be formal, documented, no favors. I slid the top page back toward her. There's the EIN, fund bylaws, emergency clause, and the conductor referral from Neil Barrett, in case Simon wants a seat in youth orchestra. Tuition waived, faculty mentor assigned. Her fingers hovered over the edge of the contract. You already called Neil? I called him last night. Sent a clip. He said the kid's got something rare, and if he's willing, there's a chair for him in spring. She blinked fast and looked away. Her hands were still shaking. I flipped to the back of page 2 and tapped a line halfway down. Medical accommodations approved by manager. I wrote that in first before I printed it, and if there's something it doesn't cover, we can amend. She reached for a pen. Add one more thing. I handed her mine. She wrote under the clause, hand jerking slightly with each word. Participant or parent may exit agreement at any time without penalty or cause. She signed after that, sharp and fast. Then she stared at the final page, the one marked for Simon, and didn't move. "That's for him," I said, "but I need a parent cosign." She didn't speak, just took a breath, picked up the pen again, and wrote her name. Then she looked up at me with the same eyes I remembered from sophomore year, steady, tired, proud. "Don't push this," she said. "I won't." We didn't hug. We didn't linger. I packed the folder, thanked her for the coffee, and walked out with the contract zipped in my bag. When I got to my truck, I called Kelsey. "Schedule the safety briefing for Simon," I said. She paused just long enough to tell me she didn't love this. Then she said, "Fine. If we do it right." That's why she's still on my team, and why I sleep at night. Before Simon even got through his second weekend set, Diego had already uploaded a clip. 30 seconds, no captions, just the audio. The shot caught him standing in the lobby corner under a framed print of a sepia-lit ballroom from the 1980s. Rain was still dripping off a coat rack behind him, and his bow was moving like he was drawing sound out of a wire strung to heaven. Nothing fancy, just raw, clear, human. Diego tossed it up on our socials like it was a dessert special. No warning, no clearance. I found out about it because my phone buzzed with a group text from Kelsey, and her opening message was, "Who posted this, and where is the release?" By the time I got to her office, she already had the clip pulled and was drafting a retroactive media release. I called Jane immediately, explained the situation, told her what was in the form, that it was for limited use, no monetization, no syndication. She read it, signed it, and asked only one thing. No interviews. I told her yes, and we reposted, this time with the file and timestamp attached to the consent form in the event log. What I didn't expect was how fast it spread. By noon the next day, we were on the local feed aggregator. By dinner, the clip hit the university's student-run paper, with a headline about a storm, a violin, and a silence no one forgot. By the following morning, a local anchor ran it as the final segment of the 6 o'clock news, called it a bright spot in a brutal weather week. After that, we stopped checking view counts. The thing crossed 600,000 by midday Tuesday. By Thursday night, it was at 2.3 million. I had 8 different people call the front desk just to ask if they could reserve a table near the boy. Some even offered tips to the receptionist if she could make sure he plays while we're seated. We weren't a theater. We were a banquet venue that sold prime rib, plated fish, and open bar packages. But that didn't stop the calls. Warren Lyle called during his back nine on a private course in Arizona. I picked up expecting small talk. Instead, I got, "Are we running a daycare recital now? Or do you still manage grown-up events?" I told him we had corporate series prep on track. He grunted. "You'd better. The $240,000 from Brigham Tech and their spin-off starts next quarter. Don't lose that over some kid with a bow." Then he hung up. I walked straight to Kelsey's office and asked what she needed to keep this from turning into a fire drill. She already had the plan. Double security. Wet floor signage at every door. Occupancy re-evals with posted head counts in visible spots. One rope line between the atrium and the East Hall, where Simon sometimes warmed up. Looked like overkill, but I knew she was right. That night, Darius came into my office without knocking. "Put me side stage when the boy plays," he said. "Don't need a badge. I'll do it on my own time." "You sure?" I asked. "I've seen how people get when a kid stuns them. Some lose sense. I'll keep it clean." I nodded. That was all we said. Then Neil Barrett, the Neil who runs the City Youth Orchestra, called. Said he'd heard the clip from a board member's kid who saw it on Reddit. Offered Simon a chair for the spring season. No tuition. Faculty mentor included. He didn't pitch it like a favor. He pitched it like a door was open if Simon wanted to walk through it. Jane and I sat down after Simon's Tuesday session and agreed to throttle the schedule. No more pop-up sets. Just 2 short appearances in the atrium on weekends. Nothing overlapping plated dinners. No pressure. If he was tired, he sat it out. But of course, Diego kept pushing. "One feature night," he said, following me down the corridor like a salesman. "One proper stage set. Build the night around him. We could theme it, light it right, bring in the trio, and have Neil accompany." I stopped by the elevator and turned. "No." He sighed. "You afraid of too much too soon?" "I'm afraid of liability and burnout. And Kelsey already said no." His hands went up. "Okay. But if you change your mind..." I didn't answer. I walked to the main board and flipped through the sprinkler inspection calendar. Stage B still had red marks. The contractor wasn't due to finish the head replacements until mid-month. That meant no full-scale activation unless we did a manual trigger or test mode override, which was a bad idea under load. I wasn't risking a room full of people and a wet violin for Diego's fantasy lineup. To keep the pressure down, I wrote a formal release for upcoming event marketing. It listed Simon as a featured guest, not a permanent act, not a resident performer, not for hire. That gave us cover. It made the line clean. The morning I sent it out, the inbox filled up again. Twice as many emails. Everyone wanted to book a table, a block, a night. We weren't even charging more, but people were throwing tips at our reservation staff like it was Vegas. One guy offered to buy Simon's set list on eBay if we could get him to sign it. The momentum kept building faster than our control. Fun, until it wasn't. I felt Warren's presence like a shadow, stretching from that golf cart straight into my office. And he didn't like feeling like the kid was steering the momentum more than he was. Jane called late, after Simon's second short set in the atrium. The house was already cleaned, chairs stacked, lights dimmed to half. Her voice came soft over the line but steady. "Can you stop by? I've got something you should see." There was no hesitation in me. I grabbed my jacket, told Kelsey to finish the closing checklist, and drove over. She opened the door barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater and holding an envelope like it might tear in half if she breathed too hard. The smell of chamomile tea filled the kitchen, but the air had that static of something serious hanging there. She didn't waste time. "I wrote this in 2011, she said. "Never mailed it." I followed her to the stove. She kept the envelope in her hand like it was glass. "After the accident," she said, "when I took you to the ER." I remembered that night too clearly. Sirens fading behind me, her hand gripping mine while I was bleeding through a ripped sleeve. The nurse told me later that if she'd waited another 30 minutes, I would have been a case for neurosurgery, not a quick patch-up. She nodded at the envelope. "It's not long, but I need you to read it." The paper was yellowed at the edges, folded twice, written in blue ink that had faded to gray. The date said June 14th, 2011. The letter started soft. "Jared, if I never find the courage to tell you this out loud, at least I'll have written it once." Then it hit. She'd liked me since sophomore year, she wrote. But when I finally asked her out after the accident, she'd already said yes to someone else. Some guy who wanted a ring before graduation. She said she told me no, because she thought it was the right thing to do, not because she wanted to. Then, within a month of walking that stage, she found out she was pregnant. The man promised to marry her, but bailed when the job fell through, and the test turned pink. The rest of the letter was the kind of honesty people usually take to the grave. She said she'd thought about calling me, but she didn't want to be someone's rescue mission. She wanted to build something on her own, to earn whatever came next. When I finished, I set the pages down on the counter, smoothing them flat so I wouldn't crumple them with my hands. "You could have sent this," I said. "I didn't want you thinking you were Plan B." I looked at her across the kitchen. "You didn't owe me anything." "I owed myself a little pride," she said, "and I guess I paid for it the long way." We stood there, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. Simon was in his room running scales on a piece I didn't recognize. His tempo was too quick, the rhythm uneven. He was frustrated, working through mistakes. You could hear it in the bow pressure, that little edge when a kid wants perfection more than he should. He beats himself up, I said quietly. He gets that from me. He gets a lot from you. Her lips curved into a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. She reached for the envelope again but didn't take it. I kept it on the top shelf behind the cookbooks for years. I almost threw it out a dozen times. I just needed you to know. You did the hard part, I said. You raised a good kid. She didn't argue, but her shoulders sagged. Good doesn't always mean easy. No, it doesn't. I leaned back against the counter. For what it's worth, I was selfish in other ways. I poured everything into the lantern house. Missed birthdays, weddings, whole seasons. I stopped showing up anywhere else. That's on me. She looked up at me, studying my face like she was weighing what to believe. I'm not going to make that mistake again, I said. We stood quiet for a long minute. The violin from the bedroom stopped mid-phrase, then started again, slower this time, more careful. The correction landed clean on the fourth bar, and we both smiled without speaking. After a while, I noticed a folder on the counter. Bills, pharmacy printouts, lab summaries. I asked, "What's that?" She hesitated, then flipped one sheet toward me. New regimen, monthly injections, helps with fatigue. Insurance covers part of it, but not all. I scanned the printout. This number right here, this is for 6 months? She nodded. I whistled low. That's a car payment and a mortgage combined. I'll figure it out, she said fast. It's not your problem. I didn't answer right away. I pulled out my phone, opened my fund ledger, and typed a note for a reallocation. I called my accountant on speaker. Shift $8,500 from the general arts grant to health accommodations, tied to the Porter file, I said. Mark it under active performer support. File it clean. Jane's eyes went wide. You can't just... I just did, I said. Legitimately. The fund covers education, housing, and medical accommodations for youth participants. It's already in the bylaws. That's not what you meant the fund for. It is now. She crossed her arms, frustration burning behind her tone. I don't want pity. Good, I said, because this isn't pity. It's terms. She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then her voice came softer. You and your damn rules. They keep me from doing the wrong thing for the right reason, I said. They make sure it stays fair. We landed there. Same line, different side, but solid ground. She folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and set it on top of the refrigerator beside a photo frame. When I turned to leave, the light caught the image inside it. An older man at a piano, his posture identical to Simon's when he plays. Strong back, relaxed hands. Your grandfather? I asked. She nodded. Harold Porter. He used to fill every corner of a room. You'd think the walls were breathing when he played. Simon's eyes were his. I could see it now. The focus, the stillness, the way he seemed to listen to something larger than the room. I paused at the door and said, I'll help protect that legacy, but I won't let anyone turn that boy into a product. She met my eyes. Then we're on the same page. I walked out into the cool night with the hum of his violin still faint behind me and her letter burning a hole in my mind. Some debts never get settled, but that one, hers, mine, ours, felt closer to even. It started like any other vendor lunch. White tablecloth, folded napkin, the kind of steakhouse where the waiters memorize your drink order before you sit down. The client was a planner out of Dallas, booking a high-end wedding series for a private estate. The father of the bride showed up in a suit that looked hand-stitched, binder under his arm, voice smooth as a contract clause. He didn't waste a second on small talk. Let's discuss exclusivity, he said, like we'd already agreed. He opened that binder and slid a single-page summary toward me. 10 weddings, 10 states, all destination-level spreads. His media company would film, produce, and license every event. His daughter's night would be first. Then, in his words, the boy, Simon, would perform at the rest as a signature feature. He said the number clean, no hesitation. 30,000 flat for a 10-event lock, travel included, no competing engagements within 200 miles for 1 year. On paper, it looked tempting. 30 grand for a minor act isn't an offer most venues see twice, but one look told me what it really was. A buyout wrapped in luxury paper. It erased school schedules, youth labor rules, Jane's consent, and my entire code of ethics in one paragraph. He handed over a draft agreement like he'd done it 100 times. Somewhere around page 3, I spotted the landmine, a clause transferring all recording and image rights to his company for promotional, commercial, and derivative purposes. Translation: Simon's music and name would belong to them. I closed the binder. "This isn't a fit," I said. He smiled like I'd made a joke. "Everything's a fit if the price is right." "Not this one." He leaned forward, voice dropping low. "You're protecting the kid. I get it. But this is how they start. Give him a platform, then watch him rise. You'll get your cut, your venue gets exposure, and he gets a career. Everyone wins." "I'm not selling exposure," I said. "I'm running a business, and he's a student, not a prop." He gave that patient smirk older men use when they think you'll come around. "Think about it. I'll leave the papers with you." I didn't. I took the meeting into the main ballroom. There, in full view of the midday setup crew, I handed him the binder back. "No," I said, loud enough to echo. "He's a minor and a musician, not venue gear." He looked startled that I'd set it out where people could hear. Kelsey stood behind me, arms crossed, her expression granite. He packed up his pages and left without shaking my hand. By sunset, Warren had already heard. I could tell by the way his number flashed on my phone twice, then a third time before I picked up. "You turned down 30 grand?" he barked. "For a wedding feature?" "It wasn't clean, Warren." "Clean?" he scoffed. "It cleaned you up. The kid's everywhere online, and you could have turned that into a private feature. Instead, you blew it. He's not for sale." "You're sentimental," he said. "That's not leadership, that's weakness." I hung up before he finished his lecture. That night, the email came. Subject line: course correction. In 3 paragraphs, Warren laid it out plain. If I didn't stop kid shows and return to standard banquet programming, he'd pull the entire Brigham Tech corporate series and hand it to our nearest competitor, Heron Heights. He used the words brand confusion, liability optics, and financial underperformance, which is investor speak for "I'll make you bleed." An hour later, Heron Heights posted a cryptic social media teaser, black background, spotlight silhouette, a violin bow glinting midair. No names, but anyone with eyes could guess who it was meant to resemble. Diego saw it before I did and stormed into my office. "They're stealing our shine," he said. "That's Simon's silhouette, same damn framing." "Let them," I said. "We can't just let it go. They're baiting clicks." "Diego, cool it. Let me handle the adults." He huffed but left. I waited until the door closed, then rubbed the bridge of my nose until I saw stars. 10 minutes later, Jane called. I didn't even have to say hello before she started. "Warren's threatening you because of us, isn't he?" "Because of me," I corrected. "My call, my risk." "He's going to pull business, Jared. That's money your staff needs." "I know what it is." "I don't want Simon to be the reason you lose." "Stop," I said, firm. "You don't get to carry my weight. You've done that enough already." The silence after that line was long enough that I could hear Simon faintly practicing in the background. She finally said, "You really think it's worth it?" "Yes," I said. "Every part of it." Later that evening, Darius came into the hallway outside my office. He didn't knock. "That line you're drawing," he said. "It's going to cost you." "I know." He stared at me for a second. "Just making sure you really do." "I'd rather lose dollars than lose that boy," I said. He gave a single nod. "Then we'll ride it out." I wish that was the end of it. 2 hours after Darius left, our electrician, old school guy named Bruce, texted me a photo from the maintenance panel near stage B. The sprinkler test key was turned halfway to manual. Not active yet, but close. I drove down to the venue myself. Kelsey was already there when I arrived, hair pulled back, clipboard in one hand, flashlight in the other. "Bruce said the lock pin was loose," she said. "Someone reset the panel." "Anyone access logs?" "2 staffers after hours, both cleared. But the timestamp on the panel doesn't match either." She looked up from her clipboard, eyes sharp. "This isn't an accident." She was right. I could feel it in my gut. The same instinct that had kept me from signing Warren's kind of deals back when the Lantern House was still in construction. I told her, "Lock the room. No one gets in except maintenance and you." She turned the key herself, marked it in the incident log, and sealed the door. Standing there in the half-lit corridor, I could almost feel the air shift, the start of something creeping beneath the surface. The pushback had begun, and whoever was behind it wasn't finished, and I wasn't planning to fold. Not this time. The first of Warren's big corporate nights landed in March. Thursday evening, ballroom at capacity, 220 plated beef entrees, and a client who expected perfection down to the color of the napkin folds. Simon had a 10-minute atrium set booked. Background music, nothing flashy. Just him and a rug near the grand staircase, playing clean and simple while guests found their seats. 10 minutes in, the front half of the house went black. Not a full outage, just enough to make the chandeliers go dead and the LED uplights flicker out. The back line stayed lit, emergency signs held, and a few hallway sconces popped on. But the room shifted in an instant. Forks paused, voices dropped, and phones lit up like fireflies. Kelsey was moving before I could get out of my seat. She had glow wands in 2 hands, shouting, "Nobody moves fast. Everyone stays seated." Staff slid into place by the main doors. Path lights came up along the baseboards. The breakers in the north panel had flipped, and Kelsey was already radioing to get Bruce, the electrician, on site. Then came the sound we didn't want. A hiss, short, sharp. Then a cold mist burped from the sprinkler heads over stage B. Not a full dump, but a pressure bleed. A puff of chilled water that fogged the edge of the ceiling like breath on glass. Kelsey turned to me with her mouth half open. "That's not possible," she said. "We locked the panel." She pulled her phone and made 2 calls, fire inspection office and venue security detail, while I pushed through the service hallway toward the side entrance. I didn't even need to look for Darius. He was already moving. Some guy in a utility shirt had slipped behind the bar prep corridor, crouched low, swiping a badge at the back access panel. Darius didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just stepped between the guy and the hallway, held out a hand and said, "Card. Now." The guy froze, tried to bluff it, then backed off fast. "I was looking for the breaker box," he said. Darius took the card, turned it over once, and read the logo out loud. "Heron Heights. You want to explain what that's doing here?" The man looked ready to bolt. Darius just said, "Office, now." I called the fire inspector directly, told him we had a live scene, someone in custody, and a sprinkler test activation with possible sabotage. He said he'd be on site in 20 minutes. Meanwhile, we had a ballroom full of half-stressed, half-curious corporate guests, a moody lighting situation, and a 12-year-old with a violin standing in front of 200 people holding flashlights. I walked back into the atrium just as Simon stepped off the rug. He didn't panic. He didn't even look around. He pulled a stool from the side wall, sat down like it was planned, and brought the bow up to the string without a mic. He played dry, straight acoustic. No backing, no lights, no nothing. Just tone and breath, and the sound of bow hair catching on string. The room held still. There's a kind of silence you can't manufacture, where people forget they're waiting for something. They just listen. It was that. Then the trio moved. I didn't even give the cue. The cellist stepped out from behind the curtain, took a chair on the far side of the atrium, and dropped a single drone note beneath Simon's line. The pianist sat beside the baby grand and followed the boy's elbow, keeping close to the phrasing without stepping on it. The three of them built a sound you could walk into. By the time the lights flickered back and power came full again, no one had touched their forks for 5 minutes. When the piece ended, Simon lowered the bow and just nodded once. No theatrics, no drama, just done. Applause followed, not loud, not wild, but long. People clapped like they'd just come back from somewhere. After the show, the fire inspector met us in the service corridor. He had a flashlight, a clipboard, and a face like he'd seen this before. "The panel was forced," he said. "Someone used a test key. That's why it misted but didn't dump." I nodded. "Can we prove who touched it?" He lifted the key panel. "Too early to say, but there's a lock pin missing, and the seal was broken. That doesn't happen unless someone's been trained where to look." Darius handed over the Heron Heights badge, the man's full name, and a scanned copy of his site access. "He works load-in for them," he said. "Didn't have clearance to be here." The inspector took a statement, logged the evidence, and told us to keep the man detained until the police detail arrived, which we did. No drama, no press. We didn't make a public statement. Not yet. We kept Heron's name out of it. Let the investigation go through proper channels. Cameras picked up enough footage, and our logs were solid. No need to fan flames while the department did its job. Warren called that night, playing dumb. "Just heard about the glitch," he said. "Everything okay over there?" "Everything's fine," I said flat. "Glad to hear it. Might be wise to postpone the rest of the series, though. Safety and optics, you know." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "You'll get the incident report and the security stills. I'll bring them to the board meeting myself." There was a pause, then a chuckle that didn't reach his throat. "Looking forward to it." I hung up without another word. The clip from the flashlight night spread fast, one share cascading into the next. Everyone loves a save, especially when it's a kid staying steady while grown-ups scramble. By the end of the week, we'd hit almost 4 million views. A couple national sites picked it up. One headline read, "Young violinist holds crowd together during blackout." We didn't chase it, didn't monetize, just left it alone. Then, 2 Mondays later, a man walked into my lobby and asked for Jane. He wore too much cologne and a button-down that still had fold lines in it, like he'd just pulled it off the rack that morning. His smile had no warmth in the eyes, sharp, shiny, obviously fake. "I'm Simon's father," he said, loud enough for the receptionist to freeze halfway through a call. "And I'd like to speak to his mother. Now." I was at the front desk within seconds. He looked me up and down like he thought he had the upper hand. "You must be the guy." "What guy is that?" I asked. "The one making money off my kid," he said. "Don't play stupid." He said he wanted to manage Simon, wanted a formal stake in all future contracts, wanted percentage cuts going back to when the clip first blew up. He used the phrase, "what's mine," more than once, like he'd walked in off a long vacation and expected his throne back. I told him to leave a card. He said, "I didn't come here to get brushed off." I said, "Then you should have started by calling." He raised his voice, drew a few heads from the coat check area, and started saying things I'm not going to repeat. That's when Darius showed up. "Sir," Darius said, calm and firm, "we're going to take this conversation into the office." The guy tried to stand his ground. Darius didn't budge. 3 minutes later, he was sitting in the side conference room, arms crossed, tapping his ring on the table like a clock. I closed the door behind us and called our attorney. Jane arrived 20 minutes later. I told her what was waiting before she stepped in, but still, her face went pale when she saw him. Pale, but not soft. She stood tall, looked him dead in the eye. "You don't get to show up now." "You going to keep me from my own son?" he said, grinning like he'd just won something. "You did that yourself," she said. "You skipped 3 hearings. You signed your rights away. You don't get a redo." He laughed like it was all a joke. "Yeah, well, I'm here now. Maybe I want joint custody, or full. Maybe I want to be in the picture again. I didn't bother arguing. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Support order from 12 years ago, signed, filed, unpaid, plus a settlement letter from our lawyer, drafted 2 days prior, just in case. Here's what we're offering, I said. You sign away parental consent for future adoption, and we settle the arrears. You get to walk out clean. Otherwise, we file for enforcement, and your wages get garnished. You think you can just buy a family? He snapped. You think throwing money around makes you his dad now? I didn't flinch. No, but I am following the law, and no one's forcing you. You either do the paperwork, or you deal with the court. He stood, chest puffed like he was ready to swing. Then he saw Darius standing just outside the doorway, arms folded. The tension snapped right out of him. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, he muttered. You'll need one, I said. He walked out with a deputy escort from the off-duty police detail we keep for corporate nights. I made sure he didn't speak to anyone else on the way out. Jane sat down hard in the chair after the door clicked shut. You okay? I asked. She nodded, but it took a while before she said anything. Then finally she whispered, That should have ended a long time ago. She didn't cry in the moment, but when she did later, it wasn't victory. It was release. Like something heavy had been sitting in her chest for over a decade and finally slipped out when she exhaled. 2 months passed. The wage garnish order hit his job in Tulsa, and suddenly his tune changed. He signed, paperwork filed, parental rights terminated voluntarily under pressure, clean, legal, permanent. And still, some people had opinions. A few commenters found old clips and tried to stir it up online, said I was manipulating the situation, white knighting, buying a legacy. I didn't respond. Let them talk. They didn't know the boy. They didn't know what Jane had built on her own. Simon didn't say much about any of it. He just practiced. But when Neil handed him his first orchestra program with his name printed right, Simon Porter, he ran his fingers over the letters like he wasn't sure they were real. That was the first time I saw him smile with his whole face, eyes, cheeks, all of it. And for once he didn't say sorry after a run-through. He just played. The boardroom smelled like legal pads and weak coffee. Long table, 5 chairs filled, tension thick. I didn't wait to be asked. I handed out printouts, incident logs, timestamps, access control screenshots, a close-up still of the Heron Heights badge from the guy Darius caught, and one neatly highlighted email from Warren that read, Your venue's turning into a daycare recital. Fix the optics before it kills our corporate value. I didn't read it out loud. I didn't have to. The tone was the point. I laid out my offer, clean, legal, ready to execute. I wanted to buy Warren out. His minority stake over 6 months, fair market valuation backed by a bridge line from First Mid-State Bank, with the rest coming through a donor-matched campaign tied to our youth arts initiative. I was calm when I said it, but I wasn't neutral. Kelsey stood next, staff rep seat. She laid out everything we'd done since the sprinkler stunt. New fire panel, new heads, updated evacuation charts, 2 extra hours of training per quarter, logged in staff files, vendor reclearances, and a revised security loop that didn't miss a door. She had tabs in the binder and spoke like she was reading straight from code. That helped frame it right. This wasn't personal. It was responsible. Then came the vote. 3 yeses. Warren said no. Didn't matter. We weren't a tie-break board. Majority carried. He shoved back from the table, red-faced, mouth tight, muttering something about sentiment over margin. I didn't follow him out. And the truth is, I didn't enjoy it the way I thought I would. I'd spent so long bracing for that fight, I forgot how heavy peace can feel after. By then, Jane and Simon had moved out of the 7-month corporate unit. They were renting a 2-bedroom across town, quiet street, good bus route, walking distance to school, and the music store. We ran a 2-night community concert in the atrium. No table minimums, open floor, donations only. Simon played one night, Neil played the other. It was the kind of crowd that claps even for tuning. We pulled in $74,000, most from small checks. One quiet 10 grand from Neil's foundation, handed over with nothing but a nod. I signed a new deal with a contractor the next week, retrofitting Stage B, adding acoustic panels to the atrium, installing sound shields so Simon wouldn't be filling a glass canyon with just his bow and heartbeat anymore. Jane took the bakery decorator job for real. We built her a permanent workstation in the corner of the prep kitchen, waist-height counter, cushioned stool, low-heat lamp. She piped borders like it was surgery, clean, focused, no wasted movement. She never pushed herself past the limit. When her energy dipped, she stopped. No drama, no guilt, just an understanding. We weren't building a dream. We were building something livable. Simon started piano, said it helped him hear the lines his grandfather used to write, said it helped him think about harmony, not just melody. He arranged a medley, his own variation on 3 of Harold's oldest themes, and by December, it started showing up in our holiday sets. He didn't announce it, just played. The adoption process started like all legal things do, with a manila folder and a checklist so long it made your brain numb. Home study, background checks, letters of intent, reference calls. Nothing romantic about it, no big reveal, just forms and time. The social worker who came by asked fair questions. We answered honestly. I kept the workplace lines clean. No special bookings, no comps, no deals under the table. Every agreement stayed inside the original contract's terms. We did counseling, all 3 of us. I learned to shut up. Learned to wait through silence and not fill the air just because I could. Learned that when Simon didn't answer a question, it didn't mean he didn't hear it. It meant he wasn't ready. And I respected that. In month 11, everything lined up. The final hearing was scheduled. Jane's medical regimen had stabilized. Simon's orchestra season was locked in. That Tuesday morning, the house was quiet. He was at school. She was cleaning out the junk drawer. I walked into the kitchen, dropped the mail beside her, and said, "I think we should make this permanent." She looked up at me with tired eyes and a soft smile. "Which part?" "All of it," I said. "But let's start with you and me. Will you marry me?" There was no ring yet, no speech, no fanfare, just the question. She nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I will." And that was enough. We signed the marriage license at 9 sharp in the Franklin County clerk's room. Just the 3 of us, 2 witnesses, and a no-nonsense woman in a blue cardigan who didn't smile until it was done. "Minimum legal vows," Jane had said that morning, smoothing the sleeves of her blazer. "No fluff." I said, "Fine by me." Simon wore a navy button-down that didn't quite fit the shoulders yet, and held the pen like it was a conductor's baton when it was time to sign as a witness. At 10, we walked up 1 floor to the step-parent adoption hearing. The courtroom was quiet, fluorescent lights buzzing low. The judge double-checked our papers, looked over the home study report, then turned to Simon. "You understand what you're saying yes to?" Simon didn't blink. "Yes, sir," he said, steady and clear. "Then let's make it official," the judge said, and signed. By the spring concert, his name appeared on the program as Simon Carter Porter. The clerk told us there were 2 open slots that afternoon, one for a ceremony, one for reception time. Jane looked at me. "You want to do it today?" I shrugged. "Why wait?" We booked both and walked out with a stamped copy of the decree in hand, and the kind of silence that only comes after something permanent settles into place. By 4 p.m., Ballroom C was lit and trimmed. Kelsey ran the timeline like a military op. 2-minute cues, full sound check, labeled seating, every candle level. She never let emotion get in the way of execution, and I was grateful for it. Neil played piano as guests filtered in. No sheet music, just his ear and muscle memory. When the walk-in started, Simon stood up from the back corner and walked slow to the center, bow in hand. He played a theme Harold Porter had written in 1971, unrolling it like ribbon. Then, halfway through, he slid into his own variation, smooth as breath. Diego filmed from the side aisle, wiping his face every 10 seconds with his sleeve. "It's just allergies," he said, grinning through it. "Really bad ones." Darius stood by the ballroom doors in his best gray suit, not because anyone asked him to, but because he wanted to. I don't think I'd ever seen him smile that wide. He looked proud enough to crack his tie. We kept it small. 40 guests, roast chicken and spring vegetables, bundt cakes Jane had decorated herself the night before, sitting on a stool in the prep kitchen, muttering at anyone who tried to help. "I've got steady hands and frosting left," she said. "Let me work." I raised a glass after dinner and told the story plain. No polish, just facts. I said I used to be rules first, that I thought structure was what made a place safe. But I learned the hard way that the right people teach you something better. How the rules matter more when they make room for others, not when they shut the door. I didn't say Warren's name, but I mentioned the fight. Said we were better for it. Said that a venue like ours should never sell a kid's gift to the highest bidder. It should protect it. I thanked Kelsey for being the grown-up in every room, Diego for taking the risk on a stormy night, Darius for knowing what danger feels like before anyone else sees it, and Neil for opening the door that let the right people walk in. Jane stood up and handed me a wrapped frame. Inside it was that old letter, the one she wrote and never mailed. "We lost time," she said, "but we didn't waste it." And I knew exactly what she meant. The lights dimmed after the toasts. Simon stood once more, this time at center stage, and closed the night with a tune that didn't have a name, just warmth and breath and memory, a piece that belonged in the room we'd all built, whether we meant to or not. I stood next to my wife, my son a few feet away, the stage lit soft and gold. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about the schedule. I raised my voice one last time, and I made it a promise. I'll protect this family and this house, whatever it costs. And if anyone tries to buy that kid again, they can take their checkbook somewhere else. Would you risk losing everything to protect what truly matters? Your family, your principles, or your peace? Share your answer, or just drop "good story" in the comments. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. It means a lot to us, and for you it's just one click.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.